Hi all. This is the fall newsletter going out to subscribers on Labor Day. Here we go. The title, Earth School's Pluto and Aquarius Curriculum. An 180-degree paradigm shift is approaching at warp speed. Starting with a painting called The Guardian of the Phoenix Fire. 2 quotes to get us started. The first, without this wearying world, we cannot find enlightenment. Without the responses, we would be bereft of the fabulous friction which illuminates our Buddha nature. That's by one of my favorite Dzogchen teachers, Nakchen Rinpoche. And the second quote by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, quote, enlightenment is ego's ultimate disappointment, unquote. Here we go. The theme of this newsletter was downloaded through me as a response to many clients and loved ones' legitimate concerns, including mine, about exponentially accelerating climate change. This is not the first time that mankind has sunk the ship it's riding in. Think Atlantis. There's a link there. But never before on such a global scale has there been this much man-made havoc causing so much harm. Perhaps the only thing we can be sure of is that enough of a tipping point has been reached to affect all living beings on the planet, more or less, and sooner rather than later, without fail. Consequently, during this time when unrelenting environmental crises are becoming our new normal, it's especially important that we consciously recommit to staying on this planet and caring for it as it is now. This means accepting that the cumulative effect of climate change is going to cause our habitable playing field to continue shrinking inexorably. If you want to know how you can, not just survive, but actually thrive amid so much daily chaos, please read on. On the other hand, if your primary desire is to placate your little self by rejecting any notion that the ride ahead just might be the most challenging of any incarnation to date, you might as well stop reading now, or listening now. Bye-bye. From an Akashic Records witnessing perspective, climate change appears to be a balancing karma manifesting at the collective level, encompassing the whole of humanity, aka the universal laws of cause and effect playing out en masse with the entire human race, rather than solely personal or ancestral karma. There are 2 other primary causative factors adding fuel to inner and outer fires. The first is 2023's entry of transformational Pluto into Aquarius through 2043, 20 years. For more, there's a link to owning our inner Pluto before it eats us for lunch. And 2, the ongoing quickening of planetary frequencies, accelerating the evolution of consciousness. For more on this, one of many links on the quickening is how to be in paradise during a cosmic flu pandemic, which I wrote about before the COVID pandemic, by the way. As we're reading this, our initial reaction may be to cry out, quote, oh no, not more change disrupting my comfort or safety, unquote. Please know that this is a very common root chakra, security and survival response at the level of the ego personality. But once we raise the level of our true identity to the soul's timeless nature, we can see that accepting the reality that dangerous weather may continue to cause massive changes in our lifestyles will allow us to work and play with what remains, rather than devolving into denial, anger, and self-pity. Consequently, if we want to be ahead of the curve, we need to apply the focus of our discriminating awareness towards a major attitude adjustment. This is essential if we wish to make the best use of our lives going forward, based on the probabilities now unfolding with extreme weather being one of the most dominant themes of our global coming attractions. For with Pluto and Uranus-ruled Aquarius for the next 20 years, along with trickster of awakening Uranus and Earth-ruling Taurus until 2026, being proactively mindful of what we do have power over, our inner kingdom of physical senses, emotions, thoughts, conscious awareness, and discriminating mind, is the key to flourishing while maintaining peace of mind. For more on this, there's a link to my psychic empowerment practices, which teach you how to maintain peace in your inner kingdom on a daily basis, no matter what is going on in your personal reality or the world. When Uranus first moved into Taurus on March 6, 2019, I wrote that we need to prepare ourselves to be able to witness with equanimity more and more of that which has been known and safe falling away. And now, with Uranus continuing his journey in Taurus through April 2026, these next 3 years will amplify the trickster of awakening's energies even more. So we can expect Even more, oh yes, unpredictable events, whether man-made and or nature-made, occurring during this last phase of this particular cycle of karmic lessons coming our way on all levels. For more, there's a link to all your stagnant comfort zones are gone. To start our inner paradigm shift, it's important to remember that, as Edgar Cayce said, quote-unquote, mind is the builder. This means that we're continuously co-creating our personal reality from our belief system, which is very rarely fully conscious. Therefore, it behooves us to see where we can find some wiggle room in loosening our grip on attachments, aversions, karmic ruts of identity, and yes, even preferences in our relationship with all of life. For while some limiting beliefs may have served us up until now, at least at some lower chakra level, that time will soon be long past in terms of efficacy and skillful means. For more on this, there's a link to choosing a belief system that actually works for you. It's time to re-examine what we think of as truths or personal laws, but are actually merely beliefs forged and ingrained by experiences of their surpassed lives. So while on the ego little mind levels these quote-unquote truths may feel legitimate, under the laser-sharp psychic lens of our Uranian-ruled higher mind, it's time to ask, quote, does this belief just reconfirm what my little self needs or wants to hear, and or is it merely an outgrown defense mechanism that my wounded inner child is still clinging to, unquote. Once we can unwind the layers of denial of reality just as it is, and unconditionally accept that what has once served us no longer does, especially limiting beliefs that, quote, we need this, that, or the other, unquote, to be happy. Then we can get on with the optimal soul growth and karmic healing we chose this exact time in human history to incarnate for. The majority of readings I've channeled over the last 50 years have been on the level of personal karma. Many times it's the occurrence of an unfortunate event that causes the seeker to finally contact me, even if they've been thinking about it for ages. This event is what I call, quote-unquote, the presenting symptom. This could manifest as, quote-unquote, accidents to one's home, body, bank account, or business, or a scary health diagnosis or the loss of a loved one. In the vast majority of cases, the reading points out that nothing less than what has occurred as a catalytic wake-up call could have created enough shock to the system to awaken them to a course correction aligned more with their soul assignment and less with their ego desires, preferences, or addictions. There's a link here for the nature of addiction is only human. Continuing, it's human nature to always choose the lesser pain. For that reason, it usually takes some sort of alarming event on the physical level of manifestation to quote-unquote encourage us to choose to go for the clean, sharp, growing pains we've repressed, avoided, or denied, sometimes for years or even decades. Despite the fact that all the while we were receiving signals from our higher self whispering in our ear that a course correction was needed. These signals begin on the more subtle levels of the psychic body through dreams, visions, and inner voice, and then through the mental, emotional, and energy bodies, through anxiety, dread, and feeling consistently, quote-unquote, off. But for most of us, we need a physical manifestation through crisis, aka emerging-C, S-E-E, emergency, as a tangible expression of our higher selves yelling in our ears, quote-unquote, course correction indicated, exclamation point, for us to finally pay attention. It's one of the many reasons why the Tao is called catastrophic events, quote-unquote, gifts from the gods. When upsetting circumstances push at us as spiritual resistance training, it incites us to rise to the occasion, consciously recommit to the life force, and become much stronger and more internally stable at our core. Once we dissolve the initial shock and trauma instigated by events seemingly beyond our control, we can experience a radical shift arising. This is when we realize we have the potential of unlimited conscious power over our response to whatever is presented. Even though the event typically arrives in a distressing disguise, it's always an empowerment teaching with life as the ultimate guru. To learn how to dissolve shock and trauma, there's a link to my Taoist practices, MP3s, starting with the standing practice and then moving to the sitting practice, which dissolves shock and trauma in the subtle bodies. Think of it this way. Whenever upsetting events present themselves, it's our preloaded karma unfolding at the perfect time, personal and collective. How we choose to respond determines our destiny and future karma. When we can witness our karma unfolding with 20/20 hindsight, from the soul's witnessing perspective in the spacious present, we can truly see how all the quote unquote shit raining down on us in terms of personal as well as humanity's karma is always to ultimately serve our highest good, as a lotus needs the mud to grow into its potentials. Thus, even the most devastating events in the short term can appear in the long term as necessary gifts for our karmic healing. It takes whatever it takes to awaken us to our true nature. When calamity strikes personally and now globally, the optimal outcome is for us to allow life to crack open our hearts wider than ever before with compassion for all suffering beings, including ourselves. The flowering of our innate bodhicitta, loving kindness, is supported by karmic teacher Saturn's journey in heart-opening Pisces through February 2026. All personal global catastrophes inspire us to expand our concept of identity to one of a multi-dimensional light being outside of linear space and time. And even beyond that, to holding the vision of one being with billions of faces, but only one divine heart. As Ram Dass said, quote, "During the stroke I died again, and now I have a new life in a disabled body. This is where I am. You've got to be here now. You've got to take the curriculum." Unquote. For more, there's a link to this theme in Mid-Fall Karmic Weather Report. Then there's a painting called The Deluge, and I describe it by saying, "I channeled the above painting as a depiction of how I felt energetically about the conscious choice I made in a past incarnation during the last inundation of Atlantis, just before it sunk completely into the sea. I tried to capture the moment of watching the final tidal wave coming in, holding to the unconditional faith in my heart that all is well." In that past life, many of my loved ones had already escaped by boat to Egypt, as it was predicted with near certainty that a cataclysmic tsunami was approaching at warp speed. This man-made event was caused by scientists tinkering with energies which they ultimately lost control over. Oops, we've done it again. I chose not to schlep overseas to survive physically, as not only was I lazy, but I was at peace with dropping my body. I also knew from the soul perspective that I would meet up with my loved ones again in Egypt in my next incarnation. And so it is, and so it was. Analogously, these days, more and more clients have been asking me where they should move to be safer, quote unquote, for the long haul, as climate migration is beginning to affect us all in different ways and is certainly no longer solely a third world phenomenon. I remind them that since death is, quote unquote, absolutely safe, that's Ram Dass, through Emmanuel, it's best to cast their vote to move or stay based on where their heart and mind calls to them to maintain the best quality of life with equanimity in the flow. When I psychically scan a few possible geographical locales that they've offered up as possibilities to see which have the most light for them, the determination is based on overall energetic and karmic factors that are most favorable for all levels of development. But ultimately, they would need to physically visit prospective new environs in the present time to viscerally confirm in their bodies that this could be a new home base. These days, the bottom line has changed for psychic astrological questions pertaining to optimal geographical location as well as time frame for the move. Because probabilities are shifting so rapidly now, the ideal solution to this type of question lies more on the level of the individual's personal and family karma rather than the relative safety of any particular geographical location. This means that where to move depends on whether someone's good fortune accrued from past lives extends to whether it's best for them to continue to stay in a known and comfortable home base under increasingly more uncomfortable conditions and or with the potential to be under attack from extreme weather, or to go. For more on this theme of how lucky do you feel, here's the classic story, Appointment in Samara. Quote, "The speaker is death. There was a merchant in Baghdad who sent his servant to market to buy provisions, And in a little while the servant came back, white and trembling, and said, "Master, just now I was in the marketplace. I was jostled by a woman in the crowd, and when I turned I saw it was Death that jostled me. She looked at me and made a threatening gesture. Now, please, lend me your horse, and I will ride away from this city and avoid my fate. I will go to Samara, and there Death will not find me." The merchant lent him his horse, and the servant mounted it, and he dug his spurs in its flanks, and as fast as the horse could gallop he went. Then the merchant went down to the marketplace, and he saw me standing in the crowd, and he came to me and said, "Why did you make a threatening gesture to my servant when you saw him this morning?" "That was not a threatening gesture," I said. "It was only a start of surprise. I was astonished to see him in Baghdad, for I had an appointment with him tonight in Samara." My definition of good karma, aka luck or good fortune, is that which has been preloaded as part of the package deal of this incarnation. And while our good karma has been well earned from past lives, it is also simultaneously a gift from the divine. This last piece is especially important to acknowledge with gratitude so that we don't squander our karmic rewards, which could actually translate into future karma if we become complacent out of a sense of entitlement. I've been writing about the quickening since the 90s and have been feeling its effects since the harmonic convergence in 1987. But in the last decade, we've been experiencing an extraordinary, ever-increasing surge of higher frequency and waves inundating the Earth. What is the quickening? I describe it as the continuous, unrelenting acceleration of planetary, galactic, and cosmic energies heralding in the next great age in the evolution of consciousness. For some time now, the energies flooding us are not just vertical anymore, but horizontal as well. Therefore, we're being hit simultaneously by the denser, cumulative energies of the mass consciousness and the karma of the world. The 1-2 punch of this energetic blitzkrieg can leave us feeling unsteady with episodes of vertigo and short-term memory loss as we're getting knocked out of linear space and time more and more. So now we're all being affected by these accelerating frequencies in different ways, vertically and horizontally, dependent on our level of conscious soul evolution. This means that the quickening has gone from just manifesting inside of us as the cosmic flu, with dominant symptoms such as fatigue, body aches, and brain fog, to somatizing outwards, firstly into the world, through the worldwide pandemic, and now climate change. This gives us an idea of just how potent these manifesting co-creative energies are in bringing us all together on the planet as we evolve towards unity consciousness, aka one being with 8 billion plus faces. We're finally getting the higher truth on a more visceral level that we're all in this together, regardless of any arbitrary external boundaries or divisions of race, country, class, or religious beliefs. Powerful stuff. As we're now firmly ensconced in the Kali Yuga, spiritual dark ages, it would be good if we remind ourselves daily that our souls chose to be born in this most interesting of times in the evolution of consciousness. During this period in human history, we have the precious gift of being in the vanguard, leading the way towards the light of unity consciousness, which will play out over the next few millennia in the age of Aquarius. And now the horizontal energies bombarding us are really being kicked up a notch with Pluto and Aquarius running the show through cycles of destruction and ultimately rebirth, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. All this gives us the FGO, fucking growth opportunity, to burn a lot of karmic baggage rapidly, with the Lords of Karma exhorting us to action by yelling in our collective ear, quote-unquote, "course correction indicated!" Exclamation point. Taoist philosophy is all about Wu Wei, aka going with the flow. Here's one of my favorite quotes on this, as it epitomizes that which I aspire to on a daily basis. Quote, "When a cat falls out of a tree, it lets go of itself, becomes completely relaxed, and lands lightly on the ground. If the cat made up its mind that it didn't want to fall, it would become tense and rigid and would just be a bag of broken bones upon landing. In the same way, it is the philosophy of the Tao that we are all falling out of a tree at every moment of our lives. As a matter of fact, the moment we were born, we were kicked off a precipice, and we are falling, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. So instead of living in a state of constant tension and clinging to all sorts of things that are actually falling with us, because the whole world is impermanent, be like a cat. Don't resist it, unquote. That's Alan Watts. On the soul level, on the soul consciousness level, we're all volunteers in experiencing Earth School now as a colossal alchemical cauldron. And we could say that the galactic alchemists are presently stirring the pot as they increasingly turn up the heat. So I envision us all cooking in what I call, quote unquote, the experiment now in progress, also known as the Earth Game. All this to heal our collective karma of harming ourselves and the planet by not remembering who we truly are and why we're really here at all. For more, there's a link to if this were your last incarnation, what would you do? When clients are going through a particularly rough patch, they oftentimes ask, quote unquote, when is it going to end? While their difficult time may have been triggered by some heavy-hitting, challenging transits of Saturn, Uranus, and/or Pluto, it is always combined with the karma they're playing out. For this dynamic duo is what determines the specific type of test they're experiencing. So I always respond on the deeper levels of the truth to their question. And my answer has always been, quote, your challenging times are never going to end, and although they may change form as transits come and go. But unless you're willing to release your attitude of dissatisfaction and aversion to what is, and let go of your resistance to reality, your suffering will continue. However, as long as you're here, if you'd like some guidance as to why your particular circumstances are happening from a karmic perspective and how to more skillfully play the Earth Game going forward, then you've come to the right place, unquote. So now, in answer to the same question, on a global level of, quote unquote, when is it going to end, my response is still the same. Although on the mass consciousness level, the good news is that I am witnessing a higher level of a new transpersonal heart-level concern for the suffering of others, courtesy of our Uranian-ruled 24/7 news cycle. Global news cycle. In terms of the heart-mind evolution of consciousness, things are picking up speed, as there appears to be more compassion for all human suffering and not just one's own predicament. For now, courtesy of escalating climate emergencies, we all have the same predicament in common, and the medicine for all is compassion in thought and deed, and gratitude for what remains. And always to remember when witnessing disasters from near or far, quote unquote, there but for the grace of the goddess go I. The quickening provides the balancing energies to give us a booster shot of cosmic juice to help us ride the tumultuous waves of the Kali Yuga and not get inundated and swept away in an undertow of negative and fear-based thinking. I've written a lot about the Kali Yuga and the quickening. Here are some tastes. There's links to greatest hits of the Kali Yuga, and the quickening phase 2 is here to rock your world. It's also good to keep in mind that the human evolution of consciousness is still in its baby stages in terms of potentials. In the 1970s, Chogyam Trungpa said that only about 1% of humanity is ready for awakening to higher consciousness. Now, in my view, maybe 2%. In 2023 and beyond, as we witness more divine orderly chaos playing out as the pot is heating up more, we're being given the opportunity to step up the level of our heart and mind game and affect the mass tone and the ripple effect. So, is our collective karma uppance good news or bad news? From the longest range Taoist perspective, everything is always in the flow, aka all one with the Tao. That doesn't mean it can be viewed in the short term as anything other than horrific, as we witness over the remainder of the century and beyond, perhaps billions, including loved ones and ourselves, dropping their bodies at a faster rate than usual. Therefore, it's always imperative to embrace the higher truth that no one drops their body except at the perfect timing for each of their soul assignments, as there are no victims on the soul level, only very courageous volunteers. Also, there's much good news baked into the longer-term probabilities. Miracles. 1. Miracles of creativity to solve and turn around climate change. 2. Lessons learned for future generations from mankind's mistakes in abusing power in the earth for short-term personal gain, comfort, and greed. And, of course, greed. 3. Healing and bringing into balance the human race's karma collectively. In all of the above, a perfect storm for accelerated evolution. Here are some quotes on this theme that I found very useful to contemplate. Quote, "We just can't seem to stop burning all those buried trees from way back in the Carboniferous age in the form of coal, and the remains of ancient plankton in the form of oil and gas. If we could, we'd be home free climate-wise. Instead, we're dumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at a rate the Earth hasn't seen since the great climate catastrophes of the past, the ones that led to mass extinctions. We just can't seem to break our addiction to the kinds of fuel that will bring back a climate last seen by the dinosaurs, a climate that will drown our coastal cities and wreak havoc on the environment and our ability to feed ourselves. All the while, the glorious sun pours immaculate free energy down upon us, more than we will ever need. Why can't we summon the ingenuity and courage of the generations that came before us? The dinosaurs never saw that asteroid coming. What's our excuse?" Unquote. And that's by physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson from his TV show Cosmos in 2014. Next, here's a quote by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Quote, "We can change the world, definitely. For the warrior, every moment is a challenge to be genuine, and each challenge is delightful. When you let go properly, you can relax and enjoy the challenge. Chaos should be regarded as extremely good news. When chaos occurs, even within that chaos, we can smile, which cures confusion and resentment. The Shambhala teachings are founded on the premise that there is a basic human wisdom that can help to solve the world's problems. The wisdom does not belong to any one culture or religion, nor does it come only from the West or the East. Rather, it is a tradition of human warriorship that has existed in many cultures at many times throughout history." Albert Einstein, quote, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it," unquote. And finally, by Ilya Prigogine, he's a Nobel laureate, quote, "When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order," unquote. In closing, I think it's helpful to keep in mind that we're only on the threshold of the next great age in the sign of Aquarius, which will last for over 2,000 years. Thus, the higher frequency galactic energies bombarding us, while necessary to kickstart this next stage in the evolution of human consciousness, are also playing havoc with all levels of our body, from the psychic to the physical. We are all becoming evolutionary guinea pigs in the vanguard of this new age. Our new normal is learning how to live as if we are in between the old 3D ways of being in this relative plane, and simultaneously becoming acclimated to being in 5D and beyond while fully embodied. The culmination of this Bardo period will be an expansion of the range of being vertically and horizontally, so that ultimately we'll all identify as multidimensional beings experiencing an earthly sojourn. And finally, here are my soul-level resolutions for our Pluto and Aquarius curriculum and beyond. 1. I'm exercising patience as events unfold, since there may be FGOs yet to be revealed, especially in such dark nights of our collective soul, and smile. 2. Enjoy the ride today even more by acting as if each day is our last, and smile. 3. Hold the faith that life goes on, our souls live on, and that which we have always been seeking, source, has been inside us all along, and smile. 4. Be grateful that life is doing its damnedest to help us remember why we are truly here, and just keep on smiling. Wishing us all bliss and equanimity as we witness the unfolding of all the good news and all the bad news, especially whatever triggers our personal alarm bars, aka global karmic PTSD, there's a link to that, as this is where our healing and soul growth will flourish the most. As we awaken and open our hearts more to our true identity of pure being, I see us dancing with whatever is in the flow, with neither attachment nor aversion to timing or outcomes. And so it is. Love always. Signing off. Joan.